Hi, welcome everybody. Thanks so much for being here this evening from all the places that you're zooming in from. We're so grateful that you could be here, and we're excited to get started soon. As you settle in, um, I welcome you to read a little bit about our lovely speaker on the slide that you see there, and we'll get started soon. All right, as folks trickle in, welcome you to take a look at the slides, um, get settled in, make sure you have your water and all the nourishing things with you, and we'll get started soon. All right, welcome, folks. We'll get started soon. For those who got here at 6, I'm going to keep welcoming people, so you're going to hear this over and over for the next minute or two. But just want to help orient people as they trickle in. Thank you so much for being here this evening. We're so grateful you could be here, and we'll get started in a couple of minutes. Okay, time to get started. Good evening. And thank you so much for being here tonight from all the corners of the world that you're zooming in from. I'm so grateful you could be here, and I'm excited for what this evening will hold for all of us. My name is Zara. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I am a brown woman with dark hair and glasses. I'm wearing a blue button-down shirt, and my background is a little bit blurry, but you might be able to see my pothos plant here if the blur is not that strong. I'm calling in from unceded Lenni Lenape land, also known as New Jersey. I'm a lecturer in the Narrative Medicine Master's program here at Columbia, and I'll be your host this evening at Narrative Medicine Rounds. I have a little bit of information that I can share with you if you're a first timer here about narrative medicine. But I want to offer a warm welcome to those who are coming here for the first time, and a welcome back to all returning attendees. For those who are just acquainting themselves, with the narrative medicine universe, I'll point you to a nice info blurb that Kristen kindly dropped in the chat. Um, I'll read a little bit of it out loud to orient us. Narrative medicine arose at Columbia in 2001. It's now an international movement at the intersection of the humanities, the arts, clinical practice, and healthcare justice. Narrative training equips clinicians to humbly try to comprehend their patients' experiences and their perspectives, to try to deliver equitable healthcare, and to do that effectively. Rigorous training and practice of narrative medicine, we believe, helps all those interested in person-centered care, respectful healthcare, to deepen their self-awareness. For people who are interested in person-centered care, people who are interested in deepening their self-awareness, clinical attunement, collaborative skills, we encourage you to engage with narrative medicine. The narrative medicine community assembles in this space monthly at rounds to grow our knowledge together, in partnership, and also to grow our commitment to a just future for healthcare. So that's a little bit about narrative medicine. Before I introduce our lovely speaker for tonight, I've also been asked to share a couple of gentle reminders, maybe some housekeeping rules to ensure that the program goes smoothly. The first one is to please keep your microphone on mute. That'll help us cut down on background noise during the program. And unfortunately, if there are any disruptions or any inappropriate activity, you may be removed from the event. The second point is during the talk, we ask you to please keep conversations in the chat to a minimum. As we get a little bit closer to the Q&A, I will invite you to submit your questions in the chat. And I'm really interested and excited to know what you think about the conversation today, what you hear from Antoinette. So please don't be shy. I really want to encourage you to drop your questions in the chat. And if we can make this as interactive as possible, I think that'd be a lot of fun. So before we actually get there, though, I'll signal you when it's the right time to drop your questions in the chat. So please save them until the end, and I'll make an announcement when it's a good time, and we'll welcome your questions then. I'm really excited to be in conversation with Antoinette tonight. Antoinette is somebody I deeply admire, somebody I really deeply respect, who wrote this stunning collection, this stunning poetry collection called Unruly. And we'll hear a little bit more about it tonight from Antoinette herself. I personally feel really lucky that my path has crossed Antoinette's in different ways over the years. Antoinette has shepherded some of my own students. She has guided some of my own students through community-based projects. We oftentimes every year in the advocacy and organizing class that I teach in the fall with Maria de la Cruz, who's also a lecturer in the program, we will usher our students towards Antoinette for a practicum and community-based project experience. And Antoinette very lovingly teaches them and guides them along the way. And I was also lucky to read Antoinette's book earlier this year. So when I revisited the text in preparation for this event, I was just thinking about how amazing it is how each time you encounter a book, it just shows you something differently, right? And that was true for my reading of this book, and I'm excited to see where our conversation goes. So now it's time to introduce Antoinette, and I figured what better way than to honor all of or some of the many ways that Antoinette has moved through the world. Antoinette is many things. She is a visionary writer, she's a TEDx speaker, she's a collective trauma facilitator, and a founder of Black Exhale. Antoinette's work has been featured all over in the Poetry Foundation and the Intima, many other places, which I encourage you to check out. Um, Antoinette's work itself explores the intersections of race, gender, health, ancestral healing. Antoinette holds an MFA from Columbia and also serves on the advisory board for CUNY's narrative medicine program. And this is her debut book of poetry, Unruly. And it was published earlier this year. And in it, she weaves poetry, memoir, documentary evidence. Yes, this is a celebration. Yes, I love the emojis. Yes, this is her debut. And she is doing such incredible things in this collection. She's weaving poetry, she's weaving documentary evidence, memoir into her storytelling, and it's just amazing. In Antoinette's own words, which I think would be useful for us before Antoinette herself takes the stage, I thought we should ground ourselves and orient ourselves with Antoinette's own words, which are that Unruly honors the Black female body as a site of profound resilience and complex histories. With uncompromising, honest, and lyrical precision, Antoinette explores the intimate experiences of Black women from historical medical abuses to contemporary health disparities, intergenerational trauma, societal beauty standards, and personal encounters with violence and healing. Unruly refuses silence by reclaiming our often unspoken and inviolable voice. We are so lucky to have Antoinette here tonight. So I welcome Antoinette now to take the virtual mic and to share a little bit about your work.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And also, thank you, Van, for your comment in the chat. And so I will begin by sharing a description of myself. And I am Antoinette, Black woman, Jamaican by birth, Um, Milk chocolate complexion, no hair, but a very fly hat with an all-around brim, and wearing white and a scarf with Ethiopian colors or Rastafarian colors as well. And in my background is my book cover actually as an art piece and plants around me in my apartment in New York City, Lenape Land. And welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. I would like to start out by sharing the beginning of my book, which is a sensitivity acknowledgement. And the sensitivity acknowledgement is because Unruly requires consent. And I think that most complex stories require consent in a way that if we do not receive consent, then our bodies don't know what we're saying yes to and what we're um, being willing witnesses for, because so often there are stories that we turn away from. And in turning away from certain stories, then we also are turning away from ourselves, our past, our complexities, our communities. So the sensitivity acknowledgement begins with a quote from a poem. Life for me ain't been no crystal stair. And although I share in the text itself, just to speak really quickly, that poem is Mother to Son from Langston Hughes. And the first time I heard that, that's the first poem that I remember. And a part of the reason why it's the first poem I remember is because I could see myself in it. And I just remember crying and thinking, life for me ain't been no crystal stair either. And so yeah, I brought in that poem for the work that it's been doing and also how it inspired me in my own truth telling. So life for me ain't been no crystal stair. Unruly holds my stories, the stories of other Black women, and the echoes of some of our ancestral voices. In this collection, the tacks, splinters, and torn up boards Langston Hughes names in his poem, Mother to Son, are given language. While I have done my best to handle these narratives with care and respect, I recognize that some of the content may be activating for some readers, particularly those with the lived experience of trauma. The structure of Unruly mirrors the fragmented nature of trauma and memory, as well as the historical erasure of Black women's experiences. Gaps, repetitions, and abrupt transitions are not flaws, but integral parts of this narrative. This approach reflects the chaos often experienced in navigating trauma, illness, and systemic oppression. As you sit in ceremony with these poems, I invite you to befriend any discomfort that arises, recognizing it as part of the journey towards understanding and healing. Please know that your well-being is also a priority. I encourage you to engage with this book at your own pace, to honor your boundaries and reactions, and to seek support if needed. You are the expert of your experience. My intention in sharing these stories is not to speak for all survivors, but to create a space where some collective truths can be witnessed and honored. In amplifying these voices, both unique and universal, I hope to contribute to a larger conversation about the impact of trauma on our lives and the fierce resilience we embody. In sharing our stories, we reclaim our voices, bodies, and right to take up space. We become the authors of our narrative, and in doing so, invite others to bring their whole selves to the page. If you see your experiences reflected in these pages, please know you are not alone. Both you and your stories are worthy of witness. If you do not see your experiences here, then may you honor the window that allows you to view stories different from your own. And now, the first poem that I'll share is titled Chocolate Cyst. And this poem I also share in my TEDx talk, Death by Chocolate Sis. And this poem was also my own entry into the world of endometriosis when I was diagnosed with stage 4 endometriosis, and they called the tumor a chocolate cyst. And so this poem is written like a personal ad. So imagining that the chocolate sis put out a personal ad because at a certain point I felt like I was being chased, pursued by illness. So imagine that the chocolate sis put out a personal ad looking for me or for other Black women. Chocolate sis, seeking someone special to spend my life with. Are you kissed by the sun and are of a darker skin hue? Are you invisible, even when your cells are viewed under a microscope? Can you carry me annually without anyone noticing? Can you carry yourself and be told you do it so well that you are an inspiration? Are you used to carrying too much history in your bones? Do they call you strong or loud or angry or intimidating as a way to silence you? Do they say you have no pain? Do they say you have no right to express your pain? If so, then I may be your match. I am the kind of presence that will not leave your inside. You say you want someone to grow with you, but what's even better is I will grow throughout you. I will leave no part of you untouched by my reach. Every inch of you will know I am with you. We will spend our days in bed, leaving this world to wonder what fire has consumed you, so I am a match. I will light up every part of you and your world so that we can spend more time together alone. We will spend our nights entangled, tossing and turning, and when the day breaks and breaks and breaks and breaks and breaks you, I will not leave you. With that being the introduction to the world of illness, and in our lifetime, we all traverse through that world, and some people stay in that world longer than others. Um, that's really what had me write the collection. Initially, I wasn't writing a collection that would be shared. I was writing because I was in an MFA program and also going to the hospital, and you bring your life to the page with you, and my life ceased um leaving my side. And so this was what I had as a life, and so that's what ended up on the page. But I didn't have the courage yet to call it a book or to imagine others seeing the work. But I do have a mouth that has always been unstoppable. And so the poem that I'm sharing now is titled Ode to My Lips, and it speaks about the complexity of being that person that has a powerful voice. In the dead of winter, I spoke a word that did not want to be heard, and my lip was busted open because my mouth needed to be closed, and the red of my blood melted through all that was pure. And then I learned how to suck in my lips, and I would look like a white girl who was protected by this world. My long hair was made of a 100% cotton towel I would flip while standing in front of the mirror to hide the curl of my kink. I was starting to accept my own invisibility when I found red lipstick, but the boys laughed, said I looked like a clown because my lips were too full of themselves. My first kiss was the back of a hand, and my lips would always pout because they were swollen from too much truth. Yet still, I will never understand silence. This poem is titled Fibroids, and in having a deeper relationship with my body, deeper to the point of putting my body on the page, um, also then needing to listen to my body through a lens of compassion and learning the language of my body and the language of illness and what's at the source beyond what the tests say, then that's where the poem Fibroids came from. Our bodies, in her infinite wisdom, could never pretend as though all was well, even as we smile and move mountains in that world with ease. We got good genes. Our bodies are the most honest part of us. Cannot pretend that that world does not salivate at our exploits and our birthings and our babies and our tongues. We were always worth more because of what came through us. Nothing that was gathered in that world was given over to us, except for the thorns. Flowers that pollinate can yield much harvest if you keep the flower alive long enough. Our bodies have had enough. Our bodies, in her infinite wisdom, have grown thorns and keeps growing them. Our bodies, in her infinite wisdom, wants us to know she grew the thorns on purpose. Ashe. Wants us to know she heard our cries. Ashe. Wants us to know she protected us the best way she could. Ashe. Wants us to know the language of flowers or fruits or bodies or soft things now. There's also several epistolary poems, and so my collection has many different forms because illness has many different forms. And it's also reconciling with the chaos narrative. And so there are certain health experiences that once it lands on your body, then chaos ensues. And we tend to stay away from chaos narratives a lot because it leaves a person feeling powerless, and it also leaves the witness feeling powerless. And that's why sometimes with illnesses, like it's really hard to be with someone who's in the chaos narrative because we don't know how to hold chaos. And so this is really about witnessing the chaos, not attempting to control it, and working with physicians when you're in a chaos health experience can also add to the chaos. And so there are several epistolary poems, and those are poems that are letters. And there are several poems written to my mother, and there are several poems written to the gynecologist. And so this one is one of the Dear Gynecologist poems. Dear gynecologist, I don't know why I apologized for screaming at you. I didn't mean it. Didn't mean to apologize. If my grandmother had been in our examination room watching you the way I watched you, her bones would have ached from the pressure building beneath the surface. Inflammation is a natural response to being worn. She would have smelled that storm in the air, gone in for shelter. Do you not believe my pain? What was between us was rank. My mouth an act of God and nature where her catastrophes will come with no remorse. And then the silences, my pounding heart, the fluttering of wings, enviable and deafening, how freedom sounded outside of my body. No, I do not want to take a seat. The waters had to break. And after the deluge, I offered you the words I needed most. I am sorry. When I was younger, someone stepped on my once white sneakers, and I apologized then too. I wore the blemish of their heavy footprint, yet asked them for grace and mercy for taking up room on the sidewalk. After you, I would refuse to go to the doctor for months. After you, I learned to honor the endings. After you, I repented for this world's addiction to Black forgiveness. The waters had to break. This was my gift to you. Um, so as I was going through my illness experience, I discovered the Mothers of Gynecology. And the Mothers of Gynecology, their narratives are woven throughout Unruly. Their narratives, while painful, allowed me to have more compassion for myself because I was able to get that what was happening to my body had happened to bodies that looked like mine for centuries, and that I was caught up in a trauma loop, a collective trauma loop. And so I got that what was moving through my experience wasn't mine to carry alone. And when there are witnesses, then it supports like metabolizing that. And part of the witnessing required that I speak, so that we can hold it together. And so Anarka, Lucy, and Betsy are the mothers of gynecology. These were the women that were experimented upon that gave birth to the field of gynecology, and they have been unnamed and yes, and their voices are present. And so this is a short poem, as- imagining Anarka speaking. If this world has demanded your silence, your body, your participation in your flesh being torn away, sold to market among bruised plums, too sweet to eat quickly, then your rebellion will be in every breath, every teardrop, every laugh that has escaped from the lips of your children. And, oftentimes when people speak about the mothers of gynecology, um, we speak about what has been done to them. We speak about their contributions to the field of gynecology. But This poem is really honoring what is taken when Black people historically are made into two dimensions, and we're missing the fullness of their experience. And so how do you communicate the fullness of their experience when it's not documented because of an intentional erasure? How do you do that? And so the poem really becomes this vulnerable act of I don't know, while at the same time attempting. When I share this poem in person, my invitation that I often make is for those who are witnessing to close their eyes while they're listening. And this is the first I'm sharing it virtually. And so I'll make the same invitation and we shall see. But I would like to share the poem and it be received with eyes closed. And this poem is untitled, and so it's unnamed. Did she know pleasure? Did they hold each other? Did anyone miss her? Was her absence noticeable? Was her presence noticeable? Did she love another? Was she loved? Did she have desires? Did they call this punishment or healing? Was this pain greater than the lash? Did she know pleasure? Did they hold each other? Did anyone miss her? Was her absence noticeable? Was her presence noticeable? Did she love another? Was she loved? Did she have desires? Did she call this punishment or healing? Was this pain greater than the lash? Did she know pleasure? Did they hold each other? Did anyone miss her? Was her absence noticeable? Was her presence noticeable? Did she love another? Was she loved? Thank you. Just to give you a visual of the poem, it's a fading poem. The awkwardness of doing this online, but I hope that it lands well. And to give a description as well, when I say fading poem, is there are several questions that are repeated, and on the page, it maybe takes up 3/4 of the page, and the print is in Black letters, and the questions just continue to repeat, no spacing. And as it continues to repeat, the coloring changes. And so the letters go from Black to lighter and lighter grays until the bottom of the page is empty. But one assumes that the questions are continuing to be asked. But that's the impact of erasure. And so how to communicate erasure without doing so intellectually. Because the fact that all of this happened when I was at an Ivy League institution, my intellect, my degrees could not save me. And so I became more and more committed to allowing my body to have voice. Because without that, then I would have just taken my Columbia degree to the grave. And I think my time for reading is coming to a close, but I will share one short poem and then pass the mic. And this poem is titled Ode to My Neck. It's a very short poem. Oh, to have a neck that is condemned for holding my nose so high in the air that for the first time I know what it is to breathe. And with that, I'm complete.
Beautiful. Oh, thank you so much, Antoinette. I feel your words filling this space, this virtual space that we're all sharing. And I just want to encourage folks to sit with your words, to hold them and to let them sink in. My goodness, so visceral, so evocative. So many of the poems that you read feel to me, gosh, the way you describe illness as a match, the way you describe your experience as a fading poem. I could feel it mirrored in sort of the soft fading of your voice too, which I think you did really well. It translated well, I think,
Thank
through
you.
the virtual space. I see some nods too, so I think maybe people agree. It's just the way you describe embodiment. So I feel like there are so many conversational pathways that we could walk down together to get this conversation started. So where to begin? I feel like one of the things that I'm thinking of, which is a phrase that you shared a little bit. Oh,
You froze for a little bit, but you're back.
my back. Let's see. How's that? Okay.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'm thinking over one phrase that is staying with me from what you shared was just how you describe the fullness of experience and embracing that I don't know. And I
Mhm.
think that there's something really important about sitting in that. And I feel like even in engaging with your book, attempting to, with some humility, around the limitations of knowing and limitations of knowing around the fullness of experience, right? And so there are parts of your text that I can relate to by virtue of our womanhood, our
Mhm.
shared womanhood, by virtue of being two women of color in this space who are experiencing the forces of systemic oppression in different ways.
Mhm.
And then there is so much about your specific experience that I might be aware of through some of these stories that you're sharing with us, but that I know I will always have a limited understanding of. And I think about the importance of holding that tension and just want to say how meaningful it is for me to listen to you talk about what you know
Mhm.
and how you move through the world and to learn from you and to witness you. And so let me get to a question. So I wonder, I wonder if we could talk a little bit about, as you were writing this, who you were speaking to, who was in front of you, that you were addressing either throughout the writing process. Did that evolve throughout the writing process? Um, has that remained the same since the book has been released to the world? Uh,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the reasons why poetry is not as commercially viable as the other genres is that one can be really flexible in the who am I talking to? And it's not like marketable. But in all honesty, first, the primary was that I wasn't talking to anyone, but that there were others speaking to me. That would be the first. And so me being a conduit was primary, and me listening. Because there was this question around why did my health just completely fall apart as soon as I got in the MFA program? Completely.
Go
But it
figure.
was but it was a time of deep listening. That's
Hmm.
what I had committed to, deep listening. And so as things fell apart, I was already in a space of listening. And so I was actually able to document. And
Hmm.
so that's first. And then secondary is I was speaking to other women, Black women specifically. I was speaking to um, even the ancestors. So it was like call and response that was happening between the ancestors and I,
Mm.
because I was using the same strategy of survival, which is to not tell anybody anything.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
And there are so many women, ancestors before me who also did not tell anyone anything. And the
Mm.
way epigenetics works is whether you tell it or not, it is
Mm.
still there and it manifests. And
Yeah.
so they were just like, there's another way. But the way requires such a high level of transparency that we often fear we'll be judged about, or like sometimes people assume that I'm like Eeyore, like, oh my goodness, everything is sad. And so like people assume that if you carry stories that aren't all rainbows, then you must be like really low life vibration, or that you're contagious in some way. You might make everyone in the room sad, just put a smile on it. And um, no, it's like stories, when we're silent, stories have power over us, and that's why we're silent. And to negotiate power with the stories and say, no, I will tell this now. Uh,
Mm.
then I'm not in a position of being victim to my stories. And so many people have had life is not supposed to just be roses. Life also has thorns. And so like there are so many stories that are discarded. So yeah, I refuse to hold on to them. And I would love for us to develop the capacity to hold the stories we carry rather than pathologizing the the things that aren't rainbows.
Mm. Beautifully said. And um, who of us in this space carries only rainbows anyway? So, yeah, I hear you talking about sort of this embodied component of our bodies remembering, your body remembering, and charting your body's memory through these stories of intergenerational trauma that
Mhm.
stitches you to the stories of Betsy and Anarka and Lucy, um, in this tight fabric of stories about Black women's pain. And, you tell us also about how body and memory are connected. And I remember you using this word, I think, in one of the poems. I thought it was interesting that you used the word refusal.
Mhm.
And some might use resistance, some might use um, other words to describe maybe a similar motion or a similar act. And so I wonder about this word refusal that you hold on to. And I think about it in the context of today, right? What it means to um, read your collection, receive your collection against the backdrop of, everything that's unfolding in our country right now, and then against a more historical framework or historical legacy of systemic racism in this country and parallel resistance from everyday people. I often come back to this quote from by Asada Shakur. Those who know of Asada are familiar with her work. She passed away earlier this year. She has this very grounding verse that I come back to when I feel overwhelmed about the current state of things in our country. She says, "Where there is oppression, there will be resistance." And I guess with that quote in mind, or in thinking about what it means to read your stories now, knowing that these stories are not new. These stories you've lived over a long period of time. I wonder what it means for you to tell these stories of refusal, what it means to tell them now,
Yeah.
today.
Yeah. Um, well, even in thinking about Asada Shakur's quote of where there's oppression, there will be resistance. And when I think about it from an embodied level and a nervous system level, like resistance is a cortisol inducing movement. It speaks to there is a force that is there that is being resisted against, and one is pushing against a thing to make space for one's humanity. And all of these things are necessary. And every Black ancestor that has resisted systems, hats off to them. I will like put them on my altar and lift them up. And as a survivor, as someone that has dealt with chronic illness, then I cannot have that much cortisol moving through my system without ending up back in the hospital. And so the first thing that I vowed was that no doctor would touch me again. And so I had surgery in 2017. And I just knew I needed to learn another way so that no doctor could touch me again. And then when I ended up back in the hospital in 2018 in the emergency room, I was like, uh-oh, something I'm missing. So all of the ways of life that we have normalized are like do lead to illness. So that's my refusal. I refuse to operate in the ways that society says to operate. I refuse to follow the norms. There is something deeply abnormal and illness inducing about the structures that we have. And I do not practice refusal from like a high place. My body has refused. So if there is someone in my presence that is out of alignment, my body will be like, girl, you better not work with them. And so that makes me really unfit for a lot of systems. There was once I quit a job because my cramps started getting worse. And so when pain starts to take over every month, then that was just a sign that of the out of alignment. And so when I quit my job, I said my ovaries told me to quit. So yeah, my refusal is that I'm not operating within structures that don't serve our well-being. Um, did we lose Zara? No?
Oh, I'm here. Can
Oh,
you
you're
can you
there.
hear
Okay,
me?
okay, cool.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that, Antoinette. And just how you're characterizing refusal for yourself. And I'm hearing, protection and groundedness. And I know we mentioned a little bit about ceremony, which I would love to get into with you a little bit too, and to think about what ritual and ceremony and spirit look like. But I fear I might get carried away and we might lose time. So I'll leave that in the atmosphere if it's something we can pull on. But in the meantime, let me welcome folks now to drop your questions in the chat. And if you've been holding them throughout this session so far, I thank you for your patience. Feel free to drop them in now, and we'll get to as many as we can. I do see one from Lord, which is, what was the tipping point for you where you no longer wanted to stay silent and began telling your stories?
The TEDx talk actually was part of that. And
Yeah.
that came when I was in the narrative medicine. So I took the narrative medicine course, illness and disabilities narratives. That that course did it for me. Because one of the things that I notice is as a Black woman, as someone from the unprotected class, as someone that grew up in violence, whenever something went wrong, I looked at me, that I was responsible for it. And so with my illness, I just saw it as my own personal failure. And then in the illness and disabilities narrative course, it allowed me to turn my attention away from myself to then look at structures and look at systems and look at um, ways that institutions are built to not listen. Um, that there becomes the challenge of how to access certain places because of the structures that are put in. And then I realized, wait a second. I did mention to doctors that I wasn't feeling well. Wait a second. I did like research and I found this word endometriosis like years before I was diagnosed and said, I think I might have endometriosis. And it just was continually dismissed. And then I became really angry and I realized it wasn't my own personal failure. It wasn't something I should hold in shame, that I was not being listened to. And from there, couldn't shut me up.
Yeah, it's beautiful to hear you talk about how you break silence and how you came to story, how you came to your story. People are saying in the chat that they admire your courage, and I want to echo that too. I think it's really brave. We're seeing a lot of curiosity, Antoinette, in the chat about your process and also just specific to your view of illness experience. We have a question here. When you write about illness, how do you decide which parts belong in your narrative work and which parts to keep sort of unspoken?
Hmm.
Good question.
You know, I had an advantage. Part of my advantage is that I was being spiritually coached. So this sounds unusual, but when you come very near death, then things shift energetically. And so I
Yes.
came back from surgery speaking about ancestors, and probably because it's only by grace that I was allowed to stay in my body, just like the way my symptoms were, in a different body, I would not like still be here breathing. And so I was receiving coaching, and part of that coaching was every morning I would wake up with these whispers, and the whispers were, tell it, tell it. And I'd be like, but I was gonna take that story to the grave. Tell it. That one too? Tell it. So, like, even writing about rape, didn't ever want to tell that. Because again, I felt it was a personal failure. I had failed to protect myself. And what had been done to my body, like it's too shameful. And I think about the ancestors and what had been done to their bodies. And the silence was like also being unable to be with their own experiences of what had happened to their bodies. And so I received the spiritual coaching of tell it, tell it, tell it. And I was also in the MFA program and other poets, Richard Howard, he read one of my first poems out loud in the class, and it was something I wrote because something was due. And I asked the professor, he said, you haven't turned in anything. I said, I'm in too much pain. How can I write? And he said, write your obsession. And I was like, well, I'm pretty obsessed with my uterus. He was like, okay. And then I came in with a poem about my most memorable pap smear. But all of my attention was on my uterus because all of my pain was there. So I couldn't think of anything else. That was it. My world was uterus. That was it. I was losing weight. I was in too much pain to eat. It was just the uterus. So between my obsession, allowing for my obsession, listening to pain as a call for attention rather than something to be averse with, the encouragement of other poets. So when Richard Howard read my poem to the class, it wasn't because because I knew he was going to do that. And so I died a little when he read my poem to the class and I felt my embarrassment. Um, but everyone was just like, wow, this is great. And so, like, imagine a whole class listening to a poem about your pap smear. Like,
Yes.
it's like,
Yes, yes, of course. Yeah, it's like, oh, I didn't realize you were going to hear that.
I know. And then Richard Howard is like, he's with the ancestors now, but he's like, uh, elder gay white man. And so he's like, what's a speculum in class?
Imagine not knowing. How lucky. Oh,
Yeah, so those were some of the ways that I was able to keep going. And of course, I also had a therapist the whole time I was going through my illness experience. And so when I'd finished writing my collection, or what I thought was finished for that version, I turned to my therapist and I was like, "Why'd you let me do this?" And she was like, "Do what?" I was like, "You
so
should have
funny.
stopped me."
You
So
can't
also
stop the
just being with,
unstoppable.
also just being with the fear, because sometimes people think that courage means that one has no fear. No, no, I was afraid the whole time. So being
Mm,
with the fear, like it means you're fully human.
yeah,
Mm.
so real. Antoinette, I think we may have time for one more question. I'm going to try to merge a couple. So I'll read them out loud and then I'll try to see if I can stitch them together. So we have one from Van, which
Okay.
is, are there things you say to yourself when you become mindful of a fight or flight or freeze response so you can respond with compassion to yourself?
Hmm.
And then we have one from Raina. Bravo to the expression of power you've shared and for the reverence to our ancestors. I am a Black female gynecologist and have been both a witness and affected as a Black body when I enter the system myself. I now teach residents and students. I would love to include your work in our curriculum and want to know more about what you would say to them is the key to moving with compassion and care. And so
Hmm.
maybe if there's a way to thread these two together, um, I'm hearing folks thinking about care and care work. And so I
Hmm.
wonder if there's a way that you might be able to reflect a little bit on how you care for yourself. Maybe there is a connection here to ceremony, to ritual, to spirit, and then
Hmm.
also maybe this outward manifestation of care, moving with compassion and care and how you would guide people towards
Yeah.
that.
So thinking back to the fight or flight question, there was once attempting to climb this little mountain and I'm really afraid of the tide coming in, and then I felt like I might be stranded in there for the whole night. I have a really colorful imagination. But I paused when I was climbing and I just put my hand to my chest and I was just like, I am afraid. It's okay to be afraid. Fear shows up when something is new. And so just being with my own humanity. So much of the ways that people are coached are to be superhuman. And I really honor my humanity. That much fear moving through my body as I'm climbing up this cliff, like that's natural. And I just carry my fear with me. And so after I presenced my fear, then me and my fear, we just kept climbing. And then when we got to the top, we were just like, okay, look around. Now it's time to go, fear, because we don't want to be up here too long. And then moving with compassion and care, that was also part of my ancestral practice. And so one first thing I did was I created an altar. The altar was love, my love altar. I put a little picture of my young self there. I had to learn how to love her. I had to also speak to her to let her know that all is well, that I am protected, that I'm moving at a slow pace, because she will sabotage a lot. And she has every right to sabotage. If I just drag her along for the ride, that's very unfair. And so I can't create the wounding that I'm trying to heal from. And so as I was working with my love altar, then ancestors also came in, and I developed this journal practice of writing to my ancestors because I didn't know them, didn't like them particularly either, um, and thought that talking to them was also inviting violence since I grew up in violence. And through that journal practice, something came up, which was a message from them to not be ashamed of the ways that they've survived. And then I heard that same message come to me of to not be ashamed of the ways I've survived. So doing ancestry work is also doing individual work. So the compassion I was able to give to them is the compassion I was able to give to myself, is the compassion I'm able to give to others.
Thank you so much, Antoinette, for your generous responses, your generous answers, and your generous stories. I know there are so many folks who are still thinking in the chat and sharing their reflections and questions. So I invite you to reach out to Antoinette and to connect with her. And Antoinette, if there are folks in the chat who, whose questions you want to take with you, I'll leave them there for a minute. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. There will be a recording of this event that will be shared with everybody who registered. And we hope to see you next week. December 10th will be our rescheduled September Rounds event. We'll be welcoming national bestselling author Lydia Yuknovich, who'll be in conversation about her newest memoir, Reading the Waves. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. Thank you most to Antoinette for being here. And thank you, Narrative Medicine folks, for inviting us both to be in conversation.